Kingdom Come Deliverance is a really unique game. Well, actually it's two games. Warhorse Studios released Kingdom Come Deliverance 1 in 2018 as an absolute wildcard in the gaming landscape of the day, which instead of butchering vampires in Tucson or grappling through Ashina, had you bumbling as a bum-ass peasant through the real historical setting of 15th century Bohemia, which if you didn't know is modern day Czechia. From the start, Kingdom Come was just so different from other RPGs, but in all the right ways, since Warhorse's design was sort of a rebuke to modern gaming. There's no instant gratification or blitz button bashing here, no sir. Kingdom Come is all about methodical, rewarding progression, and mechanics that you actually have to think about. For instance, if you want to make a potion in most RPGs, you usually just have to click a few buttons, but not in Kingdom Come. Nope, here you've got to follow the recipe like IKEA instructions and stir, mix, grind, boil, time, and pour in the correct order. And if you're counting on a big quest marker to show you exactly where to go and how to get there, well, instead of that, you better listen to this farmer tell you about a weird tree near the spot you're looking for.
Can you at least describe the route to me? The parts of it you remember?
Well... And that was the spot.
Not only were these mechanics really immersive, but they also made the progression feel real and rewarding. That's important not only for your own enjoyment of the game, but it's actually sort of integral to the entire premise of Kingdom Come Deliverance. And that's because of the character we play as.
Who are you?
Henry. From Skalitz. Watch out, here we go. Henry, Henry, the fellow who helps his fellow man.
Henry might be one of the most iconic and beloved figures of modern gaming, but he's no monster slayer or master swordsman. Like I said, he's a peasant and probably the weakest human being imaginable at the start of the game. Henry doesn't seem to have much going on in his life. He's an apprentice to his dad, the town blacksmith, but he seems more interested in boozing, sleeping, and dreaming about adventures, which, I mean, fair enough. His life, however, takes a dramatic twist when his hometown of Skalitz gets burnt to the ground by an invading Hungarian army, which is a real historical event that took place in 1403. Henry escapes with his life, but he witnesses the death of his parents at the hands of Egghead here, commander of the invaders. So Kingdom Come 1 sees Henry embark on a revenge mission across the Saga region of medieval Bohemia, which has him master combat, horse riding, and medieval riz.
Shouldn't we spread the linen out?
Henry, hush now.
Warhorse's maiden voyage really was an impressive venture. Not only was the historical setting really cool, but the game was endearing in so many other ways, from its characters to its mechanics and even its distinct sense of humor.
We can't do this, can we?
Who says? Get ringing, wench.
This is wonderful.
Bloody hell.
Of course, it wasn't perfect. The combat was clunky and didn't really click for a lot of people, myself included, and performance-wise, the game had its moments. Ultimately, I think the best word to summarize Kingdom Come Deliverance 1 is potential. One that made you really excited to see what Warhorse could do with more funding. Fast forward to 2025 and Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 comes a-knockin' with just that. If Kingdom Come 1 was potential, then Kingdom Come 2 is definitely perfection. We go from little villages to a full historically accurate medieval city with historically accurate poop everywhere, new immersive mechanics like blacksmithing, and refined combat systems that flowed way better. Except for armored fist fighting, f*** whoever put these in some of the quests. Literally everything in Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 is bigger in scale and better in substance, so despite being out for barely 3 months at the time of this video, I think it's pretty safe to say it's cemented itself as one of the best RPGs of the 2020s. But we expected Warhorse to add in and polish mechanics that they didn't get to in the first game, and we expected them to go hard or go home on the setting. The most surprising transition between the first and second games, though, is the narrative design. Both games form part of one overall story, that being the tale of Henry of Skalitz, but those two parts have pretty different tones. See, Kingdom Come 1 is a really classic story in that there's very clear good guys in the form of Henry and his friends, and very clear bad guys in the form of the raiders pillaging the Saga region. There's a little nuance here and there. For instance, Sir Hans Capon, who goes on to become Henry's best friend, is a raging asshole when we first meet him.
The bailiff can kiss my arse. I trust you haven't forgotten who's the rightful lord of Rattay.
No, it's Sir Hannes.
Oh, is he here? What, is he hiding under the table, maybe? No! Then what he wants isn't worth a fart in a bathhouse.
But for the most part, it is pretty black and white. This guy's evil, you're awesome, fuck yeah. Overall, both Kingdom Come games tell the tale of Henry's quest to avenge the death of his parents, which closely ties into the historical conflict at the time. But the first game is really all about Henry becoming the person he needs to be in order to get revenge. Because don't forget, Henry starts off being able to take fewer hits than a tree in Minecraft.
Ma? Ma? I'm hurt.
So he learns to fight, he learns about how medieval society works, and he overcomes some intermediary antagonists in the process, like Runt, leader of the bandits.
That's the fear leaving you, lad. Let it go.
But he doesn't get close to the big fishes responsible for his parents' deaths. But who exactly are these big fishes, the object of Henry's hatred and revenge? Well, to answer that, we need to touch base with the historical context a little bit. You see, Bohemia wasn't the greatest place to be at the start of the 1400s. Bohemia had recently enjoyed a golden age under Charles IV, famous Holy Roman Emperor, but that dude croaked and his son and heir, King Wenceslas, sort of preferred booze and babes over ruling, so Bohemia started falling to shit. Enter King Sigismund of Hungary, the younger brother of Wenceslas, who said, "Gee, big bro, let me give you a hand over there." The only problem was that Sigismund's idea of helping was to have Wenceslas kidnapped and marched to Bohemia with his own army to restore order, and that's how Skalitz found itself in the firing line. In the midst of all this, poor Henry and his family are just collateral. But the eventual point of Warhorse's design, and something that'll be important later, is that Henry isn't just a nameless NPC. Everyone who gets caught in this crossfire has a name, a face, a family, and a story. And this is where Henry's story starts. He swears revenge against the man whose sword took his parents' lives, a man we come to know as Sir Markvart von Aulitz, the commander of Sigismund's army.
I am Sir Markvart von Aulitz. I come in the name of Sigismund of Luxembourg, King of Hungary and Croatia, to restore order in the name of his brother, King Wenceslaus IV.
But despite Kingdom Come 1's explosive opening, neither Markvart nor Sigismund ever appear in the first game again after its opening act. In fact, Sigismund doesn't even have a single voice line. I thought this was really disappointing when I first played it back in 2018 because it sounds anticlimactic, right? But with the benefit of hindsight after finishing Kingdom Come 2, I can actually appreciate the build-up all this creates. We spend the entire first game fighting, learning, training, and growing from a newly armed peasant into a David capable of taking on these Goliaths. So it feels like we come into Kingdom Come 2 ready to give them what's coming. Only it gets a little bit more complicated than that. I mentioned earlier the biggest and surprising shift between the first and second games is how they tell their story. After dozens of hours of hearing how much of a shitbag King Sigismund is, our eventual meeting with the Hungarian king sends all our conceptions crashing down in a single incredible scene.
You have nothing to fear. Not you.
Kingdom Come 1 is about Henry becoming a person capable of taking revenge, but Kingdom Come 2 is about Henry understanding what it means to take revenge. Kingdom Come 1 may have been black and white, but the sequel is anything but, and the question asked at every milestone in the story is this: how far will Henry go to get revenge, and at which point does it stop being justice?
Is that what you really want, son? No matter how many people you kill, you can't change what's happened.
Kingdom Come Deliverance is obviously not the first game to tell a story about revenge, but what makes it worth examining is how Warhorse pulled it off. So this video is all about Henry of Skalitz and his quest for revenge. In this video we'll be looking at Henry's relationships with the game's three main antagonists, Istvan Toth, Markvart von Aulitz and King Sigismund himself. There are more antagonists than these sprinkled throughout the game, but these are the three that best explore the game's story of revenge. So that's why we're not looking at other villains like Rund or Brabant or von Burgo, though we will talk about Eric and Istvan Toth's section. Obviously there will be spoilers here for the entirety of both games. I wasn't yanking your pizzle when I said that Kingdom Come 2 will absolutely go down as one of the best games of the decade, so I can't recommend enough that you play it yourself if you haven't already. So all that said and done, my name is Zarkly and this is a video about how Kingdom Come Deliverance teaches us the difference between justice and revenge through the story of Henry of Skalitz. When I said that the first Kingdom Come has very clear bad guys, I'm pretty much talking about Istvan fucking Toth, jackass and Sigismund fanboy extraordinaire. After Markvart and Sigismund skedaddle from the game after the sacking of Skalitz, the role of primary antagonist falls to Istvan, who works as a spy and saboteur in the service of the Hungarian king. He's actually in the opening act too. He shows up in Skalitz right before the attack while pretending to be an ally, when in reality I guess he's scouting ahead of the raid. Of course, Istvan's true nature isn't exposed until well into the latter half of Kingdom Come 1. Istvan's reveal, if you can call it that, is probably Warhorse's writing at its worst, because it feels like it's meant to be some kind of shock when it really just isn't. Istvan is a well-written character and entertaining to watch, but he has zero screen time between the tutorial and his reveal, so we don't really have any investment in him. But what's important is that Istvan turns out to be the one responsible for all manner of mayhem across the Sasa region, chiefly by putting together an army of bandits and mercenaries to topple the local lords who remain loyal to King Wenceslas. True to the first game's nature, Istvan is an unapologetic dickwad and he's admittedly pretty skin deep as a character until the second game. He's deceitful, he's sly and he's smug. Not only does he have his share of blame for the fall of Skalitz, but Henry's got a more personal score to settle with him, and that's because of a certain sword. The last sword his father ever made, which Henry helped him forge right before the attack on Skalitz. Henry escapes the raid with the sword, but it's not long after when he loses it after getting his shit kicked in by Rund's bandits, who pawn off the sword to Istvan. The sword is sort of a personification of Henry's quest for revenge, a physical embodiment of it. Kingdom Come 1 ends with Henry and the gang defeating Istvan at the siege of Talmberg, but Istvan is able to escape after he takes a hostage, so Henry gets neither blood nor blade for his efforts.
Your sword? I expect you'll want it back after all the trouble you went to. Actually, you know what? I think I'll keep it as a memento.
This isn't over. I'll find you.
I look forward to it. Yeah!
But that's okay, because remember, the first game is about Henry becoming who he needs to be in order to get justice. So when Istvan rears his head again in Kingdom Come 2, this time we mean business. How Henry crosses paths with Istvan again is kind of a long and complicated story. Thankfully for the purposes of this video, it's not all that important to get into. As a rapid recap, after Henry joins forces with the famous Jan Žižka, another real historical figure, they get dicked down bad at the Battle of Nabokov, which ends with them getting captured and tortured for information by Istvan in Trotsky Castle. They escape thanks to Catherine, and Henry sneaks to the top of the castle to confront Istvan. If Istvan in Kingdom Come 1 was some of Warhorse's worst writing, then this confrontation is some of their best. Istvan sort of accepts that he's not getting out of this encounter alive, so he levels with Henry here. We can either duel him or kill him outright, but we can also talk first. One of the key things to talk about is that Istvan remarks that he and Henry are actually really alike, and Istvan isn't the only one to make this observation over the course of Henry's story.
You just won't give up, will you? I like that about you. It reminds me of someone.
I'm not like you.
You're just like me. You murder in the name of revenge.
I only did what I had to do.
Just like Zizka. Like the Dry Devil. Sigismund. Wenceslas. And you.
I'm not like you.
Like Henry, Istvan was orphaned by a war, and that loss is what drove him to carve out wealth and power for himself, in the same way that the tragedy of Skalitz is what fueled Henry to become an accomplished warrior and a noble squire. In other words, it gave them a new meaning in their lives. Henry's natural response is that the meaning it gave him is a completely different one. He's after justice for Skalitz, to drive out the vile King Sigismund and restore the rightful King Wenceslas to the throne. Well, the real value of Istvan as an antagonist is how he contextualizes Henry's journey. Because while it's easy to instinctively say Henry isn't like Istvan, just think about some of the things Henry does throughout his journey, both before and after this confrontation. Earlier in the game, for instance, if you reveal the ties between the House of Tremane and the bandits rampaging throughout the Trotsky region, Henry and Hans are sent to help Burgrave Hasek arrest all the Tremane, the main offender. On the road to Tremane, Hasek tells the two about how the bandits ambushed them and killed his comrades, including a boy named Alfred, a 12-year-old page.
I was fond of that boy.
Sorry to hear that.
He protected Lord von Burgo with his own body like a true knight. Saved him and paid the price himself.
Hasek makes no secret of how angry he is, but it's a righteous anger and one that Henry can share in too, because we know that these same bandits also killed some of our friends at the start of the game. But things don't exactly go to plan, and when we get to Tremane, Hasek gets lost in the sauce and wants to slaughter everyone in the castle, which is a cast of characters we know and like from earlier in the game, like Old Jan Tremane and Captain Gnarly. Hasek can't be talked out of it, so we have to choose whether to kill the Tremanes because of Alda's actions, or turn on Hasek and kill his entire company, who were just meant to come and bring Alda to justice.
I'm going to burn down this nest of vipers. And if anyone tries to stop me, I'll make no distinction between you and them.
Whatever the choice, it ends with blood on our hands, and it's the first time Henry and Hans really feel the personal weight of their actions. This isn't Kingdom Come 1 anymore, and we're not killing Istvan's irredeemable scumbags. This may be their first reflection, but it's far from the last. Consider how in Act 2, Henry and Zizka kill a squadron of soldiers to free the Dry Devil, a cutthroat robber baron, just because he'll be a useful ally, or how they kill an innocent church cardinal and his retinue as a step in their plan to rob Sigismund's treasury. But all of this pales in comparison to an event later in the game, and that's the Malashov raid. The Dancing with the Devil is a main quest where the Devil's Pack sets out to capture Otto von Burgov, one of King Sigismund's most powerful supporters. But to do that, the plan is to lure out soldiers from the castle where he's holed up by raiding the nearby village of Malashov. The parallels between Skalitz and Malashov aren't exactly subtle, and they're not meant to be either, because Malashov is one of the most important moments in Henry's character development, because it loops back to that one question. To get his revenge, is Henry willing to commit the same evil on others that he's trying to avenge? We do have a choice in the Malashov quest. We can either burn the village to pull off the plan, and if we walk through the ashen streets the next morning, we can see the fruits of our labour.
I'm so alone now.
On the other hand, we can oppose the plan, but to do that we need to defeat the Dry Devil in a duel. If we win, we get to take command of the mission and attack the castle head on, which leads to a tougher fight to get to von Burgov, but no civilian casualties. While burning Malashov is objectively the evil choice, I also think it's the right choice in a narrative sense, because it forces Henry to face the reality of revenge and ask himself, will you do unto others what was done unto you? So to tie back into Istvan, at the top of Trotsky Castle, he can be right when he says that he and Henry are alike, because Istvan Toth represents a possible future version of Henry, one who is willing to do anything in his personal pursuit of justice and ends up doing more bad than good. At the very end of the game, when Henry is visited by his dead parents in a dream, you can get the bad ending where your parents disparage you for losing sight of what's important and literally becoming just like Istvan.
Oh, don't leave.
You trampled everything I taught you underfoot. You've turned into the very thing you wanted to take vengeance against. You're just like Istvan.
Burning Malashov doesn't lock you into the bad ending, which is why I think it's the best choice for Henry's character. It's a stark wake-up call that shows him what it means to pursue revenge no matter what. Henry can choose to accept responsibility for the innocent blood he shed and simply vow to do better. And that's something Istvan Toth would never do.
You killed innocent people in Malashov. How could you do such a thing?
I made a mistake. They died because of me. They didn't do anything wrong. I'll never forgive myself for it.
Whether you kill Istvan in a fair fight or in a not so fair fight, you are ultimately exacting justice for his deeds. But while the man may die, his words and how they haunt Henry for the remainder of his journey certainly do not. Istvan continues to appear in Henry's dreams, most notably after Malashov, where he either taunts Henry for resorting to killing innocents like him, or if he avoided the raid, how he didn't have the guts to do what needed to be done for his cause. Istvan serves to highlight where the line in the sand is for Henry. If our hero wants to avoid becoming this man, even in the eyes of his own parents, well, Istvan ironically acts as a guide for when deserved justice becomes reckless revenge. But there's more consequences to Istvan's death than just bad dreams, because we can't talk about Istvan Toth and his relationship with Henry without also talking about Eric.
Right then. My name's Eric, and I'm in command here.
If Istvan represents the internal turmoil of Henry's quest for revenge, then the external part is symbolized by Eric. Eric features as a minor antagonist in Kingdom Come 1, where he's Istvan's right-hand goon, but we come to learn that there's a little bit more to these two than first meets the eye.
You'll need it when you kneel before Istvan.
Istvan, you say? Not Sir Istvan? Or Lord Toth? Just how intimate are the two of you?
After Istvan escapes from Talmberg at the end of Kingdom Come 1, Eric is back helping him with his usual tricks in the second game, and holy shit, he got a glow up. Or a glow down, depending on who you ask, but I think he looks way better in Kingdom Come 2. Eric is usually a permanent fixture at Istvan's side, so he's there at the Battle of Nabokov where Henry gets captured. But right before we confront Istvan in Trotsky Castle, we see Eric being sent off to deliver a message to King Sigismund. We even overhear this scene that leaves us with no doubt that Istvan and Eric were, well, that they were roommates, of course. Istvan's entire philosophy was about putting himself first, so it speaks volumes that Eric is the one thing he holds sacred, and the one person he's willing to put above himself.
This is just between the two of us. Eric never did anything to you. Leave him out of it. Do what you like. Take your revenge if you can. Drown me in blood if you want. Leave him be, please.
Are you begging me? We've hardly got started, and you're already begging.
Yes, I'm begging you.
So, when Eric learns about Istvan's demise, he's not thrilled.
The captives fled Trotsky Castle and killed Istvan Toth while escaping.
What? That's not possible. That's a lie.
It is true, Lord Toth is dead.
Who? Speak!
The messenger said something about Cobbler's bastard and some outlaws.
I swear, by everything that is holy, I will find that whoreson, and I will rip out his heart!
Hats off to Jim Hyde, the voice actor, because this is one of the best performances in the game. So, in pursuit of his revenge, Henry sparks Eric's quest for revenge. He loses the one person in the world he loves, and to avenge that loss, Eric goes to the same heinous lengths as Henry, chief among them being his attack on Kuttenberg's Jewish quarter, where Henry's allies are hiding, much in the same way that Henry could end up raiding Malashov for his cause. I think it's a pretty nice touch that when these two do have their eventual confrontation, Eric is the only person who Henry doesn't rebuke when he says that they're alike.
You're just the same as me. Just the same as Istvan.
They both lost the most important person to them in the whole world, and they both get a lot of blood on their hands as they chase what they perceive to be justice. Eric even goes a step further though, in that after Istvan's death, he no longer seems to care about his allegiance to Sigismund. For instance, when he ambushes Henry and the Devil's Pack at the Italian court, he says he'll let everyone go scot-free if they just hand over Henry. While it's easy to say this was just a thinly veiled trick at the time, he later frees Kubienka, one of the Devil's Pack who gets captured, just to deliver a message to Henry. With Istvan gone, Eric doesn't seem to give a shit about the war anymore, and maybe he never did, and he was only ever on Sigismund's side because of Istvan. This message that Eric sends Kubienka with is a challenge to a duel. One-on-one, Henry versus Eric. We're given a choice whether or not to accept it, and it's actually a pretty tough decision if we give it some thought. On the one hand, Eric's quest for revenge is a direct byproduct of Henry's quest for revenge, and the whole point of these events is to show Henry that he's balls deep in this bloody cycle. For instance, if Eric did kill us, would Hans swear revenge on him, or would Samuel? If we consider this and reflect on what lessons Henry's father tried to impart on him, then the answer feels like it should be to ignore the challenge. The only way to start breaking that cycle is to stop participating in it.
Markvart von Aulitz is next. Then von Burgov. And...
But obviously it's not that simple. Henry's already trapped in this cycle, so even refusing to fight Eric doesn't mean he's going to stop trying to kill us. By just going straight for the one-on-one though, that at least means no one else will get caught in the crossfire, and that would mean we wouldn't have to participate in massacres like Malashab or Kuttenberg. I said that Eric represented the external aspect of Henry's revenge, and that's because he's a living consequence of it. The real and subtle value of this sequence though is that it's not really about Istvan or Eric themselves. That might sound like a weird thing to say in a section of a video about Istvan and Eric, but let me explain. While this showdown might be with Eric because of Istvan's death, Henry's killed a lot more people than just Istvan. He's killed bandits, he's killed soldiers, and he's killed innocents. Henry himself was a no-name peasant who lost everything in a wider conflict. But against all the odds, that no-name peasant survived and went on to become a vengeful warrior. There's absolutely no reason though that the same fate couldn't befall one of our victims, whether that's Atsamin or Malshov or anything else. When all's said and done, Henry isn't special, he's just a survivor and he's not the only one. So Eric represents the physical repercussions of our sins as Henry, ghosts and loose ends. Our quest for revenge doesn't happen in a vacuum, and it affects friends, foes, and those whose existence we might not even think about at the time, just the same way it affected Henry and marked the start of his story. Out of all the antagonists, I really appreciate the similarities between Henry and Eric the most, even if they're a bit understated. They might fight on opposite sides, but they don't really have any major personal beef before Istvan's death. One detail that I especially appreciate is that it's pretty safe to say that Istvan doesn't want Eric to do this, and doesn't want him wrapped up in this cycle. And when it comes to fathers warning their sons off vengeance, that might sound a little familiar.
But I'm a little afraid that revenge might have become the only thing you care about. Brabant and Aulitz deserve to be punished, but death darkens the mind.
And yet, here they both are, drowning in blood to get revenge for fathers who don't want it. I had really hoped and expected that this duel would end up with a choice of whether or not to kill Eric, but there actually isn't any. If you accept the duel, it gets interrupted by the Prague militia besieging Sukdal as the final act of the game, which I think is kind of a shame, but at least Eric doesn't die. While he might have done some terrible things, there's no one less qualified to judge him for that than Henry. Istvan, Henry, and Eric all started their stories in the same way. They lost everything they had to war, and the resentment that flowed from that fueled their paths in life. For Istvan, that taught him cynicism. It taught him that nothing and no one else mattered, and that he had to do whatever it took for his own benefit. At least that's what he might tell us, but even minutes before his death, his actions seem to contradict this. Istvan dies here in Trotsky in the service of Otto von Burgov and Sigismund, and while Sigismund might be the stronger side in the war, Istvan does genuinely speak to his merits. That said, Istvan accepts that to live by the sword is to die by the sword, and it's his influence on the rest of Henry's journey that's really important. As that mantra of "we're the same" follows him throughout his adventure, it's up to Henry to decide whether that's true by the time the credits roll. The lesson that Henry should take from Istvan Toth is that his father is right when he warns him that this obsession with revenge will turn him into the very same people he swears revenge against.
You're just the first name in a long list. Markvart von Aulitz, Otto von Burgov, and I won't forget your beloved Eric. Don't you worry.
And then, the entire League of Lords. The Prague councillors? Or will you kill Sigismund? Who put them on your list? The Pope?
Eric represents the other side of that coin, because the victims of Henry's actions can come after him in the same way that he came after his enemies. Twisted as it is, Istvan's advice to Henry is genuine, but if we follow it exactly as he says, we do end up like the man himself. But if we use it as a line in the sand, then Henry, despite starting his journey in the same way as Istvan, can end it very differently. In recognizing the evil he's done and is capable of doing, Henry can also recognize what else he's obtained on his quest. He became a squire to Radzig, a friend to Hans, and he fell in love with Teresa. In cleaving to these things, instead of avenging his parents who don't want to be avenged, well, that Henry could never be the same as Istvan Toth.
I swear, by the memory of my parents, and by the soul of my dear departed father, Martin, blacksmith and sword fighter, I do so swear.
Stand as one of us.
Greetings, Lord of Talmberg.
That's the bastard who led the attack at Skalitz and killed my parents.
The personal killer of Henry's parents at the start of Kingdom Come 1 is a figure that remains shrouded in mystery for a large chunk of both games. Although we see him do the deed, it's not until a little later that we learn who he actually is. After leading Sigismund's raiders in this opening act, it's not until way later, at the Battle of Nabokov in Kingdom Come 2, that we actually see Markvart again for the first time, and where we find out that he's the commander of the Prague militia. He attends this battle as an ally to Istvan and Otto von Bergov, but there's no interactions with him. It is, however, a big moment for Henry to even lay eyes on the object of his hatred again after all this time. After Nabokov, we lose sight of Markvart again for a little bit until later in the game. We find him when Henry has to infiltrate Malashov Castle. Yeah, saying Malashov as earlier just before. In order to try and find Hans, who's being held captive inside. In the course of doing so, we overhear Eric delivering a report to von Bergov, which Markvart interrupts. Throughout this exchange, Markvart doesn't come off as outwardly evil or anything, but he does seem sort of like a cartoon henchman.
Hanish is out of the game. The Kuttenbergers are taken care of, and we'll catch Liechtenstein. You'll see, my friend. Good times are coming.
Kill you. But shut your mouth.
We're going back to Hungary.
We get a slightly more intimate insight into our egg-headed enemy at the Kuttenberg City Council, which Henry spies on while disguised as a servant. The council quest is really more about King Sigismund, since this is where he makes his debut, but this is the most we've seen out of Markvart yet, so it's definitely important to look at. He joins his king in lambasting the city councillors who, as far as we know from most of our interactions, definitely deserve it. He more or less builds off what we learned of him in Malashov and that he's King Sigismund's firm right hand. And we see even more of this after the meeting when Sigismund expresses some doubts, but Markvart tells him to stay his course. There's a lot more context both in the game and historically to this scene, but they're better saved for Sigismund's section of the video. In the Italian job quest, Henry and the Devil's Pack pull off a heist on the royal treasury in Kuttenberg. King Sigismund, faced with this huge financial loss and a slight hiccup back home in Hungary,
Sire, Ladislaus of Naples, he's declared himself King of Hungary and lays claim to your lands. He landed at Zadar with an army.
Ends up withdrawing his army from Bohemia, but he leaves Markvart and the Prague militia behind to reclaim the stolen silver and deal with the Devil's Pack. This leads to the game's final sequence, the Siege of Sukdal. Despite the siege being a 3-week affair, Markvart's involvement, although being the leader of the attack, is limited, and there's a very good reason for that.
Would you fight us? With that garrison that is so drunk that it couldn't guard one captive? We will not wait! That ain't you drunk or sober!
While the siege continues, Markvart remains wounded and out of commission for all of it, but we do get to see him one last time, and this is the meeting that's by far the most important. In Kingdom Come 2's final proper quest, Henry sneaks out of Sukdal to try and deliver a message for help. On his way though, he finds himself face to face with his parents' killer and the focus of his hatred. It's reasonable to think that there might not be much more to Markvart given what we've seen so far and the fact that this is at the end of the game. He's a killer, a commander, and a lackey. This is what we believe when we step into this room, and we could not be more wrong. The wounded, dying man we find here seems to be a completely different person from the one we met at Kuttenberg, Malashov, and of course, Skalitz. We go through these entire games without Sigismund or Markvart even knowing our faces, of being a peasant who rose from tragedy to bring justice to those in their ivory towers. And yet, as we finally speak to Markvart von Aulitz ourselves...
Aren't you that boy who ran away from us? So those were
my parents.
Your father fought like a lion. And I see you're your father's son. You've done him proud.
Markvart is a soldier, like Žižka. Unlike Istvan though, Markvart does genuinely seem to feel the weight of his sins, though he committed them in the name of something he believed in.
You remember them?
Oh yeah. I remember everyone I killed. That's not an everyday thing. Don't you?
The Markvart we meet here at Sukdal seems staunchly more human than most characters we've met before, be they friend or foe. I think the entire point of this scene with Markvart is to beg a question. What if things in Henry's life had been just a little bit different? What if, say, he had lived in Malashov? What if, instead of his parents dying in Markvart's hands, Žižka had killed him during the raid, in the name of King Wenceslas? Could Henry have sworn his revenge against the other side? Could he have been squired under Otto von Bergov instead of Radzig? Would he have joined Markvart's band instead of Žižka's? And would Istvan have been our Dry Devil, and would Eric have been our Hans? The answer to all this is, well, yes, obviously. With just a few tiny twists of fate, it could have been any of our allies sitting in this chair instead of Markvart. As everyone keeps telling us,
war is a nasty business.
War is a nasty business.
War is a nasty business.
Markvart mentions that he and Henry are the same and that they both bloody their hands for their respective causes, sort of like how Istvan claims. Henry can deny it, but this has an increasingly hollow ring since killing Istvan. And we already discussed some of the grim shit Henry had to do to get to this point, like Samin, Malashov, and killing rank and file soldiers for our own ends, even if they were on the opposite side. So that's all the more reason why the person in Markvart's chair could hypothetically be anyone, really.
Are you sure you didn't kill someone's father or mother?
But the person in the chair is Markvart. He only regrets leaving his family behind, which further humanizes him and is much to Henry's disbelief.
You have a family?
I have a beautiful wife, 2 daughters, many good friends.
Markvart, for all intents and purposes, really is one of the most normal enemies Henry ever sets his sights on. He never wanted to kill our parents, he never relished in it, the same way that Henry never wanted to kill all the people he does, but he just has to. But for what? Well, to reach here, to stand over Markvart and take revenge. Only now that we're here, we find that the only real difference between Markvart and our allies, and us, is the side we found ourselves on. The dying commander has a simple request for us, to let him die standing with a dignified death. Our options are to either oblige him, let him die of his injuries, or to kill him like a dog. But if we really understand the lessons of Henry's journey, then the only right choice here is to grant Markvart's request. Not out of revenge, but mercy.
You're talking about family, but you murdered mine.
Yes, and for that I apologize to you. And to God. I fought for what I believed in.
the King of Hungary, Croatia, and later Germany and Bohemia, the 17th Holy Roman Emperor, and the guy who actually kind of pulls off this haircut is Sigismund of Luxembourg, a titan of medieval Europe. Henry's beef might be with Istvan and Markvart, but they would never have done what they did if not for Sigismund. Because it's Sigismund who kidnaps his brother, King Wenceslas of Bohemia, it's Sigismund who invades Bohemia, and it's Sigismund who orders the attack on Skalitz. King Sigismund is the root cause of it all, so that makes him the ultimate antagonist of Kingdom Come Deliverance. Because of the raid on Skalitz, Henry finds himself fighting for King Wenceslas with the local nobles of the Sasau region who haven't yet kowtowed to Sigismund, namely Radzig of Skalitz, Hannes of Lipa, and Divish of Talmberg. And we spent all of Kingdom Come 1 helping these guys beat the army of bandits led by good old Istvan Toth. While the conflict between the royal brothers is the entire basis of Kingdom Come's plot, it's really more of a backdrop in the first game. As far as Henry is concerned, Wenceslas is the good guy and Sigismund is the bad guy. The little exposition we get at the start of Kingdom Come 1 is that Wenceslas and Sigismund are both the children of Charles IV, who was not only King of Bohemia but was also elected Holy Roman Emperor, which made him the big dog in Europe. And Charles was celebrated for ushering in a new golden age for the empire. He built universities, he patroned the arts, and he kept the relative peace in Europe. But you know who people weren't such big fans of? Wenceslas, who became king in 1378 after dear old dad kicked the bucket, because he had different priorities.
He neglected affairs of state for more frivolous pursuits.
But while Wenceslas definitely couldn't compare to his dad, it's still easy to be the good guy when Sigismund is literally invading and pillaging the land. It's not until the epilogue of the first game that we get a little bit more first-hand knowledge of the wider conflict, which felt really weird pacing-wise if you played the game before the sequel came out. This exposition comes from a meeting between the Sasau lords and a certain sleazebag named Jobst of Moravia.
It would be futile trying to explain to you the intricacies of the Luxembourg's dynastic politics.
Jobst is the cousin of Sigismund and Wenceslas, and while he's the self-appointed leader of Wenceslas' side, he's not exactly the most trustworthy guy.
If I'm correctly informed, until recently you sided with your other cousin, Sigismund.
That I cannot deny.
There's a lot of historical references going on here, but the one thing everyone can agree on is that while Wenceslas blows, Sigismund blows harder. Importantly, we also get to hear more about how this whole war kicked off. You see, when you're focused on the whole wine and wenches thing like Wenceslas, it gets a little hard to run a kingdom. So when shit started falling apart, he actually asked Sigismund for help, because by all accounts, Sigismund was a pretty competent ruler. The two of them made a plan. Wenceslas would formally succeed his dad as Holy Roman Emperor and focus on his, special projects.
To alcohol!
While Sigismund would be the one actually running the show. Except that didn't quite come to pass. Despite being literally infamous for his negligence as king, Wenceslas decided he didn't want to be left without any power as a puppet, and so he pulled the plug.
But then Wenceslas realized he would just be a puppet with a crown.
Sigismund was understandably a little annoyed, but less understandably decided to kidnap his brother and invade Bohemia. While we always knew Wenceslas wasn't a great king, the fact that he wanted to cling to power to the detriment of the entire empire is what makes him not such a great guy. In the second game, Henry finds himself playing a much more active role in the fight for Wenceslas, so the politics and characters of the war become a lot more central. True to Kingdom Come 2's shift in tone, the question of who the good side in this war is becomes a lot harder to answer. For instance, in the early game, we can meet Sir Kunesh of Belowitz, a knight who used to fight for Wenceslas before realizing he's the reason we're in this whole mess. Henry can really show his naivety in this exchange too. Despite knowing that Wenceslas doesn't exactly have a clean conscience, he still has this to say about him.
Still, for the good of the country, I'll side with Sigismund in the end, especially considering what a drunkard and fornicator that brother of his is.
Wenceslas stands up for his people.
Wenceslas can't even see the tip of his nose, and things are only getting worse.
Henry's loyalty is also challenged in our confrontations with our other antagonists.
Are you trying to make me laugh?
You want to stop the war started by King Wenceslas's incompetence by helping that same Wenceslas?
Sigismund is just trying to clean up the mess he made.
Markvart says much the same, though he at least concedes Sigismund kind of screwed the pooch by going into Bohemia with guns blazing.
Come now. Sigismund maybe went a bit too far, but all he was trying to do was to bring some order into the mess that idle drunkard Wenceslas made.
Bring order? by slaughtering innocent people.
One particular thing Istvan and Markvart point out though is that Henry is just being used. Not by Wenceslas himself, but by his supporters.
Because a weak king was just what they wanted. Everyone did whatever they wanted and exploited the situation for their own benefit.
We know that some of the nobles are generally good guys who side with Wenceslas not because they want to, but because they're actively under attack by Sigismund. But the same can't be said of some of the other lords, like Jobst.
Word has come that Jobst is mustering an army and is planning to go to the aid of Kuttenberg.
Oh, that treacherous little hole.
Jobst of Moravia is a really good portrayal of a slimy politician, and is one of the big red flags of Wenceslas's cause, because it's clear from a mile away that this guy isn't on Team Wenceslas, he's Team Jobst.
But I assure you that I am now acting in the best interests of this country, and of King Wenceslas.
You're acting first and foremost in your own interests. Everyone knows that.
Not only did he side with Sigismund at the start of the war, but this wasn't the first time he fucked over Wenceslas. And, spoiler alert, he's no friend to Wenceslas after the events of the game either. For as evidently flawed as Wenceslas is, Henry doesn't quite seem to get it. When he says that he's fighting for the good guy, it really starts to feel like he's the only one saying this. Most of the people supporting Wenceslas fall into those two categories, in that they either want to exploit a weak king or Sigismund is actively plundering their lands. Even those in the latter category though aren't under any illusions as to Wenceslas's competency. But Henry isn't a politicking noble, and we've got to remember what his perception of Sigismund actually is, because Sigismund is the one who torched his village and turned his whole life upside down. It's not that Henry fights for Wenceslas because he's worth fighting for, but because it gives him an avenue to fight against Sigismund. With all this build-up, Henry's eventual meeting with the Hungarian king is a pretty momentous occasion. It comes off of dozens of hours of story in which we constantly hear about how Sigismund has brought war to Bohemia, how he's set loose swarms of bandits and raiders, and how he seems to just be a genuinely evil guy. Henry finally lays eyes on King Sigismund in the King's Gambit quest, where he disguises himself as a servant to spy on the Kuttenberg City Council. Our first impressions of the king are about what we might expect, since he arrives yelling at someone in Hungarian before he even steps into the room. But then something weird happens. Thinking that Henry is just a simple servant, Sigismund is nice to us. Really nice. Even while he's reaming out the councillors, he's nothing but respectful to us.
And to your health too, boy. May your children grow in the land ruled by a good king.
Thank you, sire. You are too magnanimous.
Why? You did a good job. You can be proud of yourself.
This isn't the only surprising trait we see either. We witness him hold the councillors accountable for their corruption.
But instead of working on them, you idled in the baths and lined your pockets.
We see him stand up for the little guy.
And to make matters worse, the miners started rebelling.
Don't take us for a fool. They'll stop rebelling when you pay them proper wages.
And for better or for worse, Sigismund does not seem to discriminate.
I do not distinguish between those who stand in my way. Be they beggars, noblemen, or city councillors.
All this teaches us one certain thing. Sigismund is not an evil character, at least not to the extent that Henry has previously thought. In this one meeting, we can clearly see that Sigismund does genuinely seem to want to fix things for Bohemia and the Empire, because there was a lot to fix. Wenceslas had been so neglectful in his duties that the imperial nobility had elected a rival claimant for Holy Roman Emperor, threatening their father's empire with civil war. But Sigismund also had the invading Ottomans breathing down his neck at his border.
Because you morons are trying to rescue a king who's a drunkard so that the local noblemen can continue their thieving in a land without a ruler. While Sigismund has the Turks on his borders, but has to deal with your petty squabbles instead. And you can't imagine what will happen if he fails to stop the Turks. To you two, to all of us, I lived through it.
And to loop back to what we learned at the end of Kingdom Come 1, Sigismund did make a deal with Wenceslas to try and fix all this, and Wenceslas threw it all away so he could keep drinking with the crown on his head. Mind you, this isn't to say that Sigismund is a good guy, because he's not. He regularly chooses violence over diplomacy. He's got no problems with an old-fashioned pogrom, and he's got a temper. A really bad temper. But it's because of this that Warhorse are able to bring such a nuanced historical character to life in such a compelling way. Sigismund does seem principled and genuine in his pursuit of order and maintaining his father's empire, but he's surrounded by enemies and problems on all sides, and hardened by years of fighting the Ottomans, that turns him into a ruthless conqueror who burns Skalitz to the ground. Ultimately, Sigismund doesn't seek the Bohemian crown for his own ego or for the greater good of Europe, but rather a grey area somewhere between the two. The Kuttenberg Council is the last time Henry will ever lay eyes on Sigismund, and the king himself never learns who the guy pouring him drinks really is. Henry still does deliver Sigismund's comeuppance when he helps the Devil's Pack heist the royal treasury later in the game, which is one of the main reasons that Sigismund has to withdraw his army from Bohemia.
We're going back to Hungary. Get packed immediately and give the orders.
The value of King Sigismund as an antagonist is how he frames the entire conflict in which the games take place, and Henry's role in that conflict. Henry fights for Wenceslas because he believes that will eventually lead him to Istvan and Markvart, who fight for the opposite side. And while he's right, it's a long and bloody journey to reach them, one that leaves Henry changed in mind and spirit. His tunnel vision for revenge turns Henry into a soldier for a bad king. We've talked a lot about some of the sins Henry commits to get his revenge, but in the context of the broader war, there's a whole other dimension to them. Think back on the Malashov raid one last time. The aim of this quest is to capture Otto von Bergov, and while Henry might have a score or two to settle with him, he's a far cry from Istvan or Markvart. But Istvan and Markvart aren't in Malashov, and it's not for them that we slaughter the townsfolk. Instead, this is done in the fight against Sigismund on behalf of Wenceslas. This really brings us full circle on the parallels between Skalitz and Malashov. Both villages burned in the names of the royal brothers, with Skalitz at Markvart's and Malashov at Henry's. But at the very least with Markvart, he did genuinely believe in Sigismund's cause when he committed these atrocities. Can Henry really say the same though? By the time Henry sits on this hill after winning the final battle of the game at Suckdal, he knows he can't. He knows Wenceslas is a negligent king clinging to power for his own good, and we know that his supporters like Jobst only want to take advantage of him. It might have been the right thing for Henry to fight against Sigismund because of all the blood on his hands, but to even do that, he's had to lie, he's had to hurt, and he's had to kill. To do what he thought was right, Henry's had to do so much wrong. And that's the exact same boat Sigismund himself is in. It's definitely a missed opportunity that Henry doesn't have a chance to decide how he really feels about Wenceslas and Sigismund at the end of the game, though there is sort of an indirect choice. After lifting the siege of Suckdal, Žižka asks Henry if he'll become his right-hand man in the remaining fights to restore Wenceslas to the throne. And given all that we've talked about, the right answer here feels like it should be no. While Henry could do some good things in the wars to come, we know that doing good nearly always means doing some bad to get there. After the events of Kingdom Come 2, Wenceslas does return to the throne, and things go about as well as everyone expects. He continues to get overshadowed by both Jobst and Sigismund in their pursuits of the imperial crown, and when he dies, a little over 15 years after the games, Sigismund does indeed become King of Bohemia, and later even becomes Holy Roman Emperor. True to the nature of dynastic politics, Henry is just a drop in the ocean of all that. Instead of getting caught up in the whirlpool of these conflicts, there's a clear right choice for Henry to mark his growth as a person, one that's unencumbered by revenge and the past.
So you realize the price you had to pay?
War is a dirty business. No one has the power to change that. I didn't understand that before, but I do now.
Sigismund of Luxembourg, both historically and in Kingdom Come Deliverance, is a really fascinating character. He was a competent king who had the vision and skills to bring order to a chaotic empire, but faced just an endless onslaught of problems and barriers to accomplishing that. From money problems, his father's legacy, the Ottomans on his border, and of course, his own family. While he did make some remarkable fuck-ups, like starting the Hussite Wars, Sigismund did cement himself as the most powerful European monarch of his day. And it's interesting to think what might have happened if he didn't face so many of those barriers. When all's said and done though, Warhorse did an incredible job of harnessing all this history into one character, who, despite having less than 20 minutes of screen time, utterly stole the show as the game's overarching antagonist.
Compensation she wants, that little widow. And how are we supposed to pay that when there's no one even capable of guarding our treasury in the middle of fucking town? Anything else?
No, sire, that's all, sire.
When Skalitz is burnt to the ground, Henry sets out on a quest to avenge his fallen home, slaughtered friends, and murdered parents. But as much as Kingdom Come Deliverance is the story of Henry's quest for revenge, in a way, it's also a coming-of-age story for him. He goes from a village peasant to a squire, a warrior, and a hero. He does all this in the name of what he lost, but in the course of doing so, Henry also learns what it means to grow up. He finds a purpose in life, one that endures the pursuit of vengeance. He makes real friends, friends he saves and is saved by time and time again.
I've been thinking though, if I get married and have a son, I'll name him after you.
He finds love, even despite losing the woman he thought he'd marry in Skalitz.
Why? Not you. It wasn't supposed to be you, Bianca.
And in the end, he does get his justice. He kills Istvan at Trotsky Castle, Markvart meets his end at Suchdal, and Sigismund is forced to retreat from Bohemia. Henry can undergo this journey and come out as a man at the other end because of the lessons to be learned from his enemies. When Istvan says that he and Henry are alike in their final encounter, he's absolutely not wrong. And if Henry persists on his path, even his own parents think he's become corrupted. It's only after getting blood on his hands in massacres like Malashov, though, that Henry can get the wake-up call he needs to realize this. When he encounters Markvart and Suchdal at the end of the game, Henry doesn't meet the evil warlord he expected, but just a man. A man with a family and a man who did the terrible things he did because he believed it was for a greater good.
You know that. Under all the armor and finery, you will only ever find a man.
And as for King Sigismund, it's funny how a king and a blacksmith can be so alike in the sense that they both commit evil in the pursuit of good. At the very end of Kingdom Come 2, Henry is visited by the ghosts of his parents and reflects on his journey, and it's here that they disown him if you get the bad ending. But if you haven't fucked up too badly, Henry can come to terms with some of the things he's done to end up here, and so it is that Henry's journey can finally come to a close. In doing so, Henry can set himself apart from Istvan. With newfound friends and family, he can move on from his parents' deaths and focus on the future. And this is why you can still get the good ending even if you do burn Malashov. In coming to terms with the reality of war, he likewise sets himself apart from Markvart and refuses to stain his hands for a king who's just not worth it. And even aside from all that, another reason that Kingdom Come Deliverance is a coming-of-age story, a human story, is because dealing with revenge, with grief, and with grudges, well, no matter whether it's 1403 or 2025, that will always be a part of life. While the past is important, sometimes it's even more important to just let go.
It all started with this. Martin truly was a brilliant blacksmith. Sings so nicely. But it's not singing for me. It's yours, son.
It's yours.
As you wish.
So, that's farewell to Henry of Skalitz. Both Kingdom Come Deliverance games really are special ones. There are countless stories out there about revenge, but what makes these ones so memorable is because we live through it with such a great cast of characters in such an immersive setting. We get to watch Henry go through it from start to finish over the course of 2 games, from boy in Kingdom Come 1 to man in Kingdom Come 2. In a world where I had endless time, I would have loved to have done a full analysis of these games, but c'est la vie. It's one of those games that reminds us that there are still great studios out there making great games, and that's something we should never take for granted. I would say that Kingdom Come 2 is a clear winner for Game of the Year, but for now, that's curtains for me. Thank you guys for watching, and a special thanks to my good friends Patrick for using his history degree to help me out with research for this video, and Tremane for giving me script feedback. Take care, and see you in the next one.